Welcome back to the Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast. My name is Demetrius. This podcast is for fans of the Detroit Lions. You can be an NFL fan, but this podcast is primarily for fans of Detroit sports teams and specifically the Detroit Lions. My super producer extraordinaire, Mr. Mike Ward, always gets a shout. The creator, the godfather of the podcast. That's my guy. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We're back for season 5, and we have quite possibly the best team in 30 years. It's certainly the best team Mike and I have covered in 5 years of doing this. This team has a lot on paper to offer. So coming back for year 5, we're pretty excited. We think it's going to be an exciting year for the podcast, exciting year for the team, exciting year for Lions fans. So we're excited to jump back in, get going. This year, we're gonna keep the format pretty much like we've had it the last couple years. We're gonna hit a couple topics. We're gonna integrate the Twitter or X feed, whatever we want to call it. I'm still comfortable calling it Twitter. We're gonna integrate some feedback for people who watch the show live on Twitter. And so if you got something to say, you can kick it up there. Michael, let me know. If it's not something silly like SOL or the Fords need to sell the team, I might jump down that rabbit hole with you. I'm prone to do that. But without question, this is the best team we've had to cover. So we're really excited about it. As always, if you like the podcast, that's awesome. There's ways to tell us. There's thumbs, there's hearts, there's likes, there's retweets. There's all kinds of ways to do it. We like doing this. It's not on the level of some things, and there's a whole lot of podcasts you can listen to or watch. And if you choose this one, we appreciate it very much. We want to still be an option. And normally, the podcast, for those of you who are new to the podcast, first of all, the name. Right? I am a certain kind of fan. I'm a certain kind of individual, and there's a lot of fans like me. We love the team. In all situations, we love the team. I'm not the type of guy you're going to hear on your sports talk radio station in the afternoon. That's a different kind of guy. That's a different kind of format. They do a different thing. That's cool. I generally don't like those people, but that's fine. They probably don't like me either. I'm a positive guy, and I'm very positive about this team. People who know me know that. They may or may not appreciate that about me, but this is the year, though. And I say that every year, and somewhere my friend Chris is laughing. Somewhere my cousin Daryl's laughing. This actually might be the year. So part of what Mike and I talked about was you're going to want to say words like super and bowl. How are you going to do that? Right? So what I want to do is always with this podcast, which is called the Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast, because I eat blue cornbread and drink silver Kool-Aid every day, or silver cornbread and blue Kool-Aid, depending on the day of the week. This year, though, is really exciting. And I'm not going to spend too much time doing that. That's what the name is. I am the optimist of optimists. I'm a super positive fan. Guys on the other side of that spectrum that call into the radio station and want to fire the coach or do what they think I'm a slappy. They think I'm a problem. I don't really care. So we are happy to be back at it. This year is going to be better than last year on every level in my life. So we are excited to get back to it. We hope you enjoy it. If you do, find a way to tell us, find a way to tell somebody else. So now the normal podcast flow is right after the game. The thing that I wanted to do when Mike and I talked about launching this 5 years ago was that emotion that every Lions fan, every fan of any team anywhere, right after the game, you're wired, right? You have all this emotion. And Mike's idea was that's the podcast. So in general, game days, within 30 minutes of the game, we're going to be on. That's the plan. Off season, preseason, this kind of stuff, we might take a little more time, do a little something different. Today, we're just going to talk about why I think this is the year, right? And like how they finished last year, what carries over, what I think about the coaches, what I think about the roster, what I think about the other teams in the division. So we're going to jump into that stuff. We're going to take some Twitter questions. Mike's working on that now. He's already given me a couple of fingers that he's got a few ready. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're excited about it. Thank you again. If you're listening live, if you're checking it out later, we appreciate it. So I'm going to start with last year, right? They finished 8-2. That's the key. They won 8 of their last 10 games. It's It's important to note that, not just because of how well they finish, but what does it mean? They did not acquire any major talent middle of the year. What it represented was a couple of things. One, young players getting better. Young players getting better is important. It's important for every team. It's specifically important for the Lions because we have decided, basically meaning I've decided, that Brad Holmes is the best general manager in football. All due respect to Howie Roseman and a couple other guys. If you draft well and then you have a coaching staff that is good at developing talent, that is how you sustain competitiveness. And that's what I see in this team. I see the coaching staff formed with former players, the Mark Brunell and Antoine Randall and these guys who play the game. They understand. And I think what you see, Kelvin Shepard, the linebackers coach, who I like a lot, you saw young players play better in the second half of the year, significantly better. That's growth. That's development. So if you see Malcolm Rodriguez, who started at the beginning of the year, playing even better, you see James Houston come on later in the year, you see Kirby Joseph play better in the second half of the year. When you see that, that's not just, oh, those guys are very talented. That is something in the culture, something in the room, something in the building that is helping these guys get better. And so then the draft comes around and Brad Holmes goes out and acquires 5 or 6 more really talented players, and you've got this same staff that's developing these players. We should expect things, of course, from Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell. Those are easy. Sam Laporta has an opportunity to be a breakout tight end as a rookie. I think Brian Branch is already showing what he's doing in camp. And a guy like Broderick Martin has a potential to be a rotational player who does really good things on this team. If you're going to bring in 5 guys and we develop them after you brought in 4 or 5 guys last year and 4 or 5 guys the year before, what you have is a salary cap that's manageable because these are all young guys on young guy contracts. You don't have to go out and acquire a big name receiver like everybody was screaming, go get DeAndre Hopkins earlier in the year. I never thought that was a good idea, and I was pretty sure the Lions didn't think it was a good idea. And there's reasons why. I'll get to those later. But the finish to last year represented young players getting better. It absolutely represented good coaching, in my opinion. I saw Dan Campbell get better. And while anybody and everybody will rave about Ben Johnson, and I like Ben Johnson, I think his schemes are good. I think he calls plays well. I think a lot of that is to diminish Jared Goff, which kind of pisses me off because I think you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have somebody out there to execute your strategy is worthless. I think that is a relationship that is working because of both guys. I think Ben has really done a great job of understanding what Jared Goff does well and what he doesn't. He works very hard to put Goff in a position to do the things he does well and not in a position to do the things that maybe he doesn't. And I think Jared does a really good job of executing Ben Johnson's strategy. So I think that's more of a 50-50 type relationship where a lot of people, your standard afternoon radio dude is going to say, oh, Ben Johnson, oh, when we lose Ben Johnson, I'm going to fall apart. They just don't want to give credit to Goff because there's something in the DNA of certain people that don't like to give other people their just due. It happened for the better part of 12 years with Matthew Stafford, and I'm starting to see it happen with Jared Goff. But I'm going to get into Goff later. I saw what Mike put in the promo. Yeah, I considered having a segment called Goff, but I didn't. We chose not to. But those relationships are good. I think we should talk just as much about Aaron Glenn and how bad that defense was at the beginning of the year versus the defense that played the last 7, 8, 10 games was a really, really good defense. And then you added significant talent upgrades to that defense. So in terms of last year, I'll put a bow on last year with this. If they continue to develop young talent the way they have, Brad Holmes continues to draft the way he has, this team can be good for a long time. This won't be an aberration. This won't be a one-off. This will be a team that'll be around to be reckoned with for some time. I didn't even mention Hendon Hooker in the draft choices, by the way. If they get that one right, it's a whole nother thing. The quarterback out of Tennessee they drafted in the late 3rd or 4th. Don't quote me. So keep drafting well, keep developing talent well, and just as players get better, coaches got better. Aaron Glenn was a better DC later in the year, better than he was year one. Dan Campbell Can anybody argue that Dan Campbell was a significantly better coach last year than he was the first year? We questioned almost everything he did in the first year. Almost everything he did was questioned. Every game decision, personnel decisions, calling plays, firing Anthony Lynn. We questioned everything. Dan Campbell, you saw maturity in his coaching in terms of the decisions he made and how he coached the game. Nobody's going to argue how the players feel about him, how he inspires the team. Nobody can really debate that. You see that. You saw it on Hard Knocks last year. You see it. And there are those who just want to call him a whatever you want to call him. Right? Right. I don't. So frame that. We baseline that young team that grew a coaching staff that developed talent, finished the season 8-2, and then we move into the offseason. And in the offseason, you had David Montgomery, you had Cam Sutton, you had CJ Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, just on the defensive side of the ball, right? As free agents. You bring in talent from outside. That secondary, 3 of those guys play in the secondary. So if you thought your defensive secondary was an issue, you brought in 3. Cam Sutton's a known talent. CJ Gardner-Johnson, they got him on a 1-year deal, didn't affect the cap. He led the league in interceptions. What are you going to say? That's a great signing. I think it stunned everybody that Sunday night when it came across. Emmanuel Mosley, talented player coming off an injury. If he's 100%, comes off an injury, he's a steal. And you may re-sign him. And I think key underrated signing is Graham Glasgow. Not because he's a former Lion draft choice. Flexibility. Graham Glasgow can play any of the 3 positions in the middle of that line. And that, particularly with the struggles we've had keeping a healthy right guard, is important, right? Graham Glasgow can slide in the right guard. He could play center if something happens to Frank, because Frank has injuries. Frank's got a foot issue I think he's still struggling with. And he can play left guard if, God forbid, something happens with Jonah Jackson, right? So those 5 signings from outside the organization in particular were critical. Montgomery is going to be your lead back, and he's going to complement Gibbs, and he's going to make your running game better. If you love Jamal Williams, God bless you. I liked him. He's not going to do ever again what he did last year. If you love DeAndre Swift, God bless you. I loved him when he played. I loved him when he was healthy, when he was on the field, which was not nearly enough. David Montgomery's durable. David Montgomery's talented. And he's young, by the way. So those 5 signings from outside the organization, huge. Equally as importantly, but flying under the radar, Tracy Walker is coming back from an injury. Romeo Okwara is coming back from an injury. Levi Onwuzurike, by all words in camp, is developing very, very well. Finally, and those are all health-related things, right? All those guys, their contributions last year were limited by health, not talent or anything else. It was health, right? So that's 3 more players that you're bringing back. Then you just add in the rookies that I talked about and the organic growth. What if Hutch is better? He's pretty damn good last year. Kirby Joseph's going to get better. Even a guy like Melon Fonlu from 2 years. What if Aleem McNeil's better? Kaminsky's better. Those are the things that come along with really good teams staying good for a long time. Adding talent from outside the organization, drafting well, and bringing back good players. Vaitai. Have we solved our right guard situation? Whether it's Glasgow or Vaitai, have we solved it? Maybe. And then Brad Holmes simply went out into the draft and decided, you know what? I'm going to get 8 players that'll all make the team, 6 of whom will contribute probably. Gibbs, my opinion of Gibbs is obviously jaded. Potential superstar. He has the ability to do so many things. They might line him up in the slot. Don't be surprised. Jack Campbell might start from day one, but at minimum, he makes the linebacker group significantly better. Laporta will be your starting tight end. Brian Branch is pushing Tracy Walker for a starting safety spot. Hendon Hooker is what he is. Red shirt year, I want nothing from him. I don't even know if I want him to practice. I need him to get healthy. We'll talk about him next year. Broderick Martin is the key to this draft. If they hit on Broderick Martin, then Sorsdahl and Green are butter. Sorsdahl will probably make the offensive line rotation. My understanding is he can play a couple spots. Green has next level speed, and he's getting pushed by another rookie undrafted guy in Coda. So Brad Holmes just went out and did what Brad Holmes does. He just went out and got 8 players that are under rookie contracts. A minimum 5 or 6 of them will contribute this year. I would think that Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, and Branch will all contribute this year, and Broderick Martin might as well. Hooker is an investment in the future. We like that. Whatever you get from Sorsdahl or Green is butter. It's just extra. So that combination of things, a coaching staff that can develop, Brad Holmes drafting well, the culture that they built, and we're going to get to the quarterback at some point, has me super excited going into this year. Like that's sort of before we even get to them playing a game now. That is last year finishing, the culture around the organization, the influx of talent, draft and free agent and returning players, the influx of talent. They're just a better team, right? So that's how I feel about going into the season, where they sit. What does it look like? Now, all that being said, I eat a lot of cornbread, drink a lot of Kool-Aid. They have to go out and win the games. They have to go out and win the games. I will say that multiple times in this podcast. They still have to go out and win the games. But I have never been as optimistic. And remember the name of the podcast. I have never been this optimistic. Well, no, that's true. I'm older than I want to admit. The 91 team was really good. The 95 team wasn't bad. This is as good as they've been in a long time now. So Mike, you want to do the Twitter thing now? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump. Mike's got 3 of them for me, so we're gonna quickly jump into what is. So earlier I mentioned the words Super and Bowl, and predictably, somebody jumped right in and said, "Does he really think the Lions can win the Super Bowl?" So they're typing it to Mike, right? Do I really think the Lions are Super Bowl contenders? Sorry, that's the question. The answer is yes. All cornbread and Kool-Aid aside, I feel like I can make an argument that they are the 3rd best team in NFC. I'm not going to disrespect the Eagles, like Jalen Hurts too much, and they've done it. They were the ones who were there last year. You have to appreciate what the Eagles are as an organization, where they are. That being said, we played them tough first game of last year when we weren't that good. You have to appreciate the Eagles. I like San Francisco with the obvious giant question mark at quarterback. If their quarterback's healthy and he continues to play like he played, their defense is good, and you have to respect the 49ers. After that, I will debate you any other team you want to name. Name me a team that's definitely better than the Lions, because I don't know who that team is. If you want to name another, if you want to say Dallas, you can. I'm going to disagree with you, and I'll tell you 7 reasons why. Who else? Giants? No thanks. We beat them last year, rather handily. Who's the other team? Seattle? Yeah, we'll get to them. I don't know that you can definitely say after those 2, the Lions aren't as good as anybody else. So if we grant that they are in fact or probably the 3rd best team in NFC, there's a very good chance they're going to host a playoff game. They'll probably win it, and they could make it to the NFC Championship game. I don't think any of those are outrageous statements that the Lions can be in an NFC Championship game. Now, if things go well in the regular season, they're hosting that game, I like their chances. If guys get better faster than I thought, or they decide to make an acquisition, and that game's in Detroit, there's the answer to your question. By definition, they're a Super Bowl contender. I look at the schedule, and I only see 3 games that I say, oh, no. And then there's another 2 that I have as questionable. I don't struggle to tell you I think they're a 12-win team, possibly a 13-win team, depending on how they grow. And each of the last 2 seasons, they've been a better team the second half of the year than they were the first half of the year. So I don't struggle to say this is a Super. Of course, I don't even think that's hard. I don't even think that's a bold statement, right? All right, Mike. With Jamison Williams out for 6 games and Amon-Ra St. Brown hurt, should they go out and sign a big name receiver? See, that's this hot take theater, right? We did this back in the fall with DeAndre Hopkins, and there were people foolishly saying go get Lamar Jackson without any understanding of what it would cost to get Lamar Jackson. There were people saying that. The answer to the question is no, right? I don't think Amon-Ra's injury is long-term. I think he'll be back soon. And I think you have a strategy for picking up whatever you're going to miss from JMO, right? I think Gibbs is a part of that. I think Laporta is part of that. I think Marvin Jones is a part of that. I think you spread the ball around. You create an environment for defensive teams to have to pick their poison, right? If Amon-Ra is fine, he is your number 1 option. No doubt. That guy's a superstar already, in my opinion. I think Gibbs is going to create matchup nightmares What do you do? What if we line him in the slot? What if we have he and Montgomery in the backfield at the same time? What if you move him in motion to get a linebacker in one-on-one? I think Gibbs is going to be a nightmare. But I think mostly you take up and Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond deserve to be mentioned. I think the targets that would go to JMO in the first 6 games, whatever that is, let's say it's 5 or 6 a game, 6 a game. Those 36 targets will be spread amongst Gibbs, Laporta, Marv, Khalif Raymond, and Josh Reynolds, and even a guy like Dylan Drummond or Coda. So I think their idea is we're not going to rely too heavily on any one guy. None of those people I mentioned can stretch the field, with the possible exception of Gibbs, can stretch the field the way JMO can. So my view is just different. We play a slightly different style the first 6 games. Marvin catches the ball. Marvin run great routes. I think Gibbs can stretch the field in the right matchups when you need him to. And we all love Ben Johnson, so that's Ben's job. Find a way to take the 36 to 40 targets that might go to JMO in the first 6 games and get them in the hands of the right people. Maybe 7 or 10 of those go to Amon-Ra St. Brown and you just bulk up his workload. But a lot of it depends on what do teams decide to key on, where do they decide to put their focus, and then you adjust accordingly. So I do not believe you hamper your salary cap by going and giving a Julio Jones or T.Y. Hilton a large amount of money, even if it's just for a year. And I don't think you do it. I don't think you don't do it for the money. I think you don't do it because you don't need to do it. I think you have guys in the building, guys in the room. I think you think that Chase Cota and Drummond will get better. But I think ultimately Marvin Jones, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta eat up those targets that would go to JMO. You can't replace what he does to the defensive scheme. But I think when JMO gets back, then you just add another weapon to what will already be a dangerous offense. Because I think Montgomery and Gibbs as a duo, significant upgrade over DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. And some of that is Swift didn't stay healthy, and Jamal did what Jamal did. I don't see any reason why David Montgomery can't, in the same scenario, have as many touchdowns as Jamal did, get the short yardage. Gibbs brings something that none of the other 3 guys have. Certainly Swift, when he was healthy, could do some of it. I think that Gibbs brings a talent level, a skill set that creates another avenue for the Lions to be successful. So, all right, one more, Mike. What's the logical long-term plan at quarterback? You're asking me. I just told you I thought about naming a segment of the podcast Goff. The long-term answer at quarterback is the same as the short-term answer at quarterback. It's Jared Goff, right? He's 28 years old. He's under contract this year and next for cap-wise 31-ish, right? I'd already put a 3-year extension in front of him. And then you'd have him locked up through his age 33 year, right? Right now you have him at his age 29 and his age 30 year at $31 million. I would have put 3 years, 130, 135. I'd give him 43, $44 million. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And if you go look at the contracts, you'll see Herbert just took 52 or was offered and accepted 52. Burrow's going to get more. The reality is you have a quarterback who works in your system. He executes it well. Last year he had 4,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. Something pretty close to that. And we're having conversations about the answer at quarterback. There's no question at quarterback. Sorry. Bridgewater is here for a reason. If something were to happen at Goff this year, we feel comfortable that Teddy can step in. I have no reason to believe there's any issue with his talent. We're still living off a 2.5-year-old narrative that Sean McVay created back in LA, where he pretty much blamed everything on Jared Goff, and the world and the media and fans who want to do what they do accepted that narrative that Jared Goff was, quote unquote, the issue in Los Angeles. I never bought that. I do not believe that. And now I have 25 data points minimum, right? The last 25 games as the quarterback of the Detroit Lions, I'm sorry. I don't care what Sean McVay said 2.5 years ago. I don't care what he implied. I don't care that the Rams got Stafford and won a Super Bowl. I don't care. I know what I've seen. I've watched every play that Jared Goff's played the last 2 years. I know what I see. I see a 28-year-old quarterback who's playing his best football. He is top 7. Can't debate top 10. I would say top 7. I think when you get through the big 4 or 5 quarterbacks, it starts to get debatable. And if you want to tell me you think Dak is definitely better, you can say those words. The data doesn't support it, and it don't mean anything to me because Dak had significantly more than 7 interceptions last year. If you want to tell me you think Kirk Cousins is significantly better than Jared Goff, you can say those words. They don't matter to me, even though Kirk Cousins is a Spartan. So the whole idea that we have a question at quarterback baffles my mind. So the short-term answer and the long-term answer in my mind is still the 28-year-old Pro Bowler that wears number 16. I don't understand the logic behind that. And Mike, maybe there was context to it that I don't understand, but I think that you could probably put 3 years and 135 in front of him right now, and you have him locked up for 5 years. That's what I would do. And if Hendon Hooker turns out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, you have a problem that everybody would love to have in 2 years. Right? Could you wait? Sure. Will they wait? Most likely. Because you don't have to do anything now. After this year, next summer, Goff goes out and plays like he's played the last 25 games, then this is not a conversation. They're going to put an extension in front of him next year. 3-4 years. We'll have a quarterback in his entire prime. He's 28 now. We'll lock him up through his age 32 or 33 year when he's probably going to be playing his best football. There's nothing on the field that indicates to me that we have a problem at quarterback, that we have a question that needs to be answered or something that needs to be solved. And if there is, Bridgewater is your answer this year. You still need another year probably with Hendon Hooker because I don't think he comes off a true red shirt this year and then next year walks into camp ready to take the job. That would be surprising. That would be, if that happens, then okay, somebody gets traded, right? And you get assets for him. Brad Holmes is really good at his job. Now, my feeling is simply that a guy coming off 4,400 with 29-7, there's no question at quarterback. And if you were worried about him getting hurt and you just say statistically, we got lucky last year, he didn't get injured, then Bridgewater, despite how he played on Saturday, is still your answer there. And if you're thinking 3 or 4 years down the road, theoretically, Hendon Hooker's the answer. I contend your quarterback this year is Jared Goff. Your quarterback next year is Jared Goff. Your quarterback in 3 years is Jared Goff. And I don't think it was going to be a problem. So yeah, that was solid stuff from Twitter. No nonsense. Good. I applaud the Twitter group for not going crazy. So now let's move on to this year, right? What does it look like? I think that what I like to do with the name of the podcast and my perspective, which is almost always, uber optimistic, is I want to bring some logic and reasoning and some data so that one day the reputation of cornbread and Kool-Aid as a meal that fans consume for their teams, one day it's appreciated and respected. And like, wait, you can be super positive about your team and still bring logic. And that guy that calls the radio show in the afternoon looks exactly like the idiot that he is. And yeah, I don't have a problem. Mike and I have joked. Michael says, why do you don't need to bash sports talk radio? I don't. I listen to sports talk radio. I enjoy sports talk radio. There's a certain type of caller. There's a certain type of guy that calls in and he's uber negative and he wants to fire everybody. He's better than the quarterback. He could coach and run every team. That's the guy I don't like. That is the antagonist to the protagonist in front of you right now. That's who that guy is. I don't understand that way of thinking. So I'm always honest about it. I'm an optimist in life. I am certainly an optimist about this football team. So that being said, what do I think is going to happen? I think they're going to win 12 games. I think they might win 13 games. I'll wait. I'll give everyone an opportunity to get their chuckles out, right? I can make an argument about the other 3 teams, right? Because winning the North to me is bare minimum. That's table stakes. You better win the North. That's table stakes right now. I just told everybody you're the third best team in the conference. I don't need to do a whole breakdown of why they're going to win the North, do I? Well, okay, I will. I can make a case for the other three teams. It's not really the reason why, but I'll do it. The Packers were 8-9, and they traded a Hall of Fame quarterback. Okay, how much time do I? If you think Jordan Love is the next big thing, we've all missed it. Okay, you win. Congratulations. If you think Jordan Love is better than Aaron Rodgers, okay. But even that team with Aaron Rodgers, we beat them twice. We were the better team. We finished with a better record. And I just told you that we got better. I just told you we got a lot better. Our coaches are going to be better. Our defense is going to be better. Our offensive line, top 5 line last year, is going to be better because Vitae's healthy. Graham Glasgow gives us flexibility. I told you our running back room is better. Our tight end room is better. Our linebackers are better. I didn't even hammer the defensive line. I'm going to save that. We're better. Even if they are better, we beat them twice last year. I'm not worried about the Packers. The Vikings. This is the one that, okay, they went 13-4. We all know they were frauds, right? We all know they were frauds, right? We're not buying that. I mean, they went 11-0 in one possession games. Think about the statistical 11-0 in one score games. Traditionally, that's not how that works, right? So if they do something much more normal, like 7-4, which would be impressive if they went 7-4 in one score games, then guess what? They're a 9-8 team, which is kind of what they were. And they promptly went to the playoffs and got sent home. Add to that. So we baseline that they're really like a 9-8 team. 10-7 if you want to be generous. They lost Dalvin Tomlinson. They lost Patrick Peterson. They lost Eric Kendricks. That is a really good player at each level of the defense. Dalvin Tomlinson is an interior defense alignment. Eric Kendricks, one of the better linebackers in the league. They lost good players at all 3 levels. I just told you how the Lions got better. I didn't talk about a lot of losses. We're not going to miss DeAndre Swift because of what we did. We're not going to miss Jeff Okudah. God love him. Sorry about the injury thing. We're not going to miss him, though. We're not going to miss Amani Oruwariye. We're not going to miss those guys. We replaced them with better people. I'm not sure the Vikings did that. And then they lost Dalvin Cook and Irv Smith on the offensive side of the ball. So even if you buy they're 13-14, which I don't, if we baseline them where they should be, 9-8, 10-7, salary cap cost them some talent. So I don't think they're going to live up to the statistical anomaly that is 11-0 in one score games. And I don't think they're as good as they were. I think they lost talent on that team. I think Minnesota's still good. I think they're the second best team in the division. Maybe they're 9-8, 8-9. Don't know. Chicago is simple. People seem to forget they were the worst team in football last year. And my producer loves the Bears. I love my producer. But they were the worst team in football last year. And while they were getting better, and they have gotten better, you don't make that kind of jump from winning 3 or 4 games to winning 10 games. That's not how the league works. That's not how the league works. They had talent deficiencies on both sides of the ball, and they're filling them. I think they did all the right things, by the way. I'm not even making a negative statement about that. I think they did all the right things, but the Bears just aren't there. So there's your proverbial, we're better than everybody else, right? Well, everybody else got worse, in my opinion. All the other 3 teams in the North got worse. That's not even my argument, though. My argument is that we're better. We're the best team in the division. I will use a similar logic that I used on Minnesota. We finished 9-8, right? And if you allow me to pull the early Minnesota loss, 28-24, the Seattle loss, 48-45, historically bad defensive performance, by the way, or even Buffalo on Thanksgiving. If you take those 3 games, well, they were legitimately a play away from beating Buffalo on Thanksgiving. If you give me one of those, we're a 10-7 team. So let's baseline us at 10-7 for the sake of discussion. And I just tell you that a 10-7 team that added everything I told you we added, the defense that was so bad at the beginning of the year actually finished 21st against the run and 20th against the pass. And if you remember how bad they were the first 6 or 7 games, you know how good they had to be the back end of the season to get to 21-20. Not proud of that. They're not proud of that. I think with the additions Aaron Glenn getting better, growing as a coach. I think Hutch gets better. Houston is better. Rodrigo's better. Kirby Joseph's better. I think Cam Sutton is a leader and a really good corner. I think CJ Gardner-Johnson led the league in interceptions last year. He might be good. If we get Emmanuel Mosley healthy, you're talking about a back end of the defense now that might go from one of the weaknesses to one of the strengths. The O-line is still top 5, one of the strengths. That's a big difference. So if I tell you that the secondary is significantly better, Jerry Jacobs is going to come back and play better. Tracy Walker is going to come back. Starling Thomas is turning heads in camp, depth-wise, right? So when I talk about the guys back there, the growth of the young guys, the addition of Cam Sutton, the addition of CJ Gardner-Johnson, the addition of Emmanuel Mosley possibly, Tracy Walker coming back, Jerry Jacobs gets better. When we talk Kirby Joseph gets better, when we talk about that, we can all agree that secondary is better, right? Secondary is going to be much, much better. I think it's hard to argue that. Okay, let's talk linebackers. 18th pick, Jack Campbell. That helps, right? Everything out of camp says Derek Barnes, the light bulb came on, is what Dan Campbell said. Something happened with Derek Barnes and the light bulb came on. So if Rodrigo, which through 2 games looks like Rodrigo, now your linebacker room is significantly better because Alex Anzalone is steady. Whether you love him or not, he's steady. Jack Campbell, with that speed and that size, has the ability to be a stud. If Derek Barnes has gotten better, that room is significantly better just like that, with just those 4 guys. And then the key, which I think a lot of people are sleeping on, in my opinion, is the defensive front is loaded with talent. Some people don't believe it. They don't think so. They don't agree with me, and that's fine. But Aleem McNeil has played well. Isaiah Buggs, those are your starters in the middle. Onwuzurike is healthy, and I've heard nothing but good things. And if Broderick Martin is at all what they think he is, you got 4 legitimate players in the middle, and that's not even the best part of the line. Let me tell you about the edge. Hutch, Houston, Charles Harris is back healthy. Romeo is back healthy. Josh Pascal is back healthy, and Kaminsky is still playing well. Didn't even mention Julian. So you got Hutch, Charles Harris, Romeo, and Julian Okwara, Kaminsky, Houston, Pascal. That's 7 dudes up front that I think you are better against the run. I think you rush the passer almost as I wouldn't be shocked if they were top 3 or 4 in pass rush, pressures, quarterback hits, sacks. I think the defense is going to make a major leap forward and go from the 20s to 10-ish. They might have a top 10 defense. That's how significantly improved they are from young guys growing, guys returning from injury, and guys you add. I think Broderick Martin's going to be a really good player. But for them, it's largely injury. I don't think people realize that they were down Harris, they were down Romeo, they were down Julian at one point, Pascal was down, and Levi was still working through injury. By all accounts, all of those dudes are healthy now. Injuries are going to happen. But what I've been talking about is depth. I've gone through position groups and listed off so many names. That's important because when Romeo goes down, when Levi goes down, whenever happens, the guy who comes in, there's no drop off. There was a time where they were pulling guys off the street, especially in the defensive backfield. They were just grabbing dudes from grocery stores. Now the depth in the defensive backfield is scary. They're going to cut some guys that are going to go play for other teams. The statement there is simple. This defense is much more resembling the defense that ended the year, probably a top 10 or 12 defense, than the one that started the year. You're going to get a full year of the defense that played the last 7, 8, 10 games. And in doing that, you would have won the Seattle game. You would have won the Minnesota game. You might have beaten the Eagles at the start. That's where I see them as better. And I can't think of the guy that we're missing. There are people who might think Jamal was a loss, that DeAndre's a loss. If you think Amani Oruwariye or Jeff Okudah is a loss, okay. I don't. I think the backfield, the running back room is better. And that's the offense, a top 7 offense. And everybody wants to give all the credit to Ben Johnson. Great, you can do that. You can do that. I'm a golf guy. I don't mind saying it. And if you don't agree the running back room's better, then we just have to agree to disagree. And I really like Jamal, and I really like Swift when he was healthy. But every time you talk about DeAndre Swift, you have to say when he was healthy. David Montgomery doesn't have a history of injury, a history of missing games. David Montgomery is a durable, reliable back who is equal, in my opinion, if not better, as good as what Jamal did. The key is Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is the whole thing. Jahmyr Gibbs is the difference maker. If you're comparing those two groups of running backs, right? If Jamal does anything close in New Orleans to what he did last year in Detroit, God bless him. I'll admit I'm wrong. I don't see it happening. A, Saints don't have the offensive line he had in Detroit. B, I don't know if the Saints intend to use him the way Dan Campbell used him last year. Their offensive scheme is just different, right? Montgomery is durable and probably more talented than Williams and Swift, to be honest. And at the end of the day, Gibbs is the best of the four. Sam Laporta is probably going to be your starting tight end. And he what I hear, he is a faster, better blocking Hawkinson. And I love TJ Hawkinson. So I think now you have a weapon along the hash. You have a weapon at tight end because Shane Zylstra, Brock Wright, and James Mitchell did what they could. I think James Mitchell is going to get better. I think Brock Wright's still very solid. The tight end room is better because I think Laporta, even if you go back to the beginning when they still had Hawkinson, it's at least as good, if not better. But I think you're going to see Laporta get utilized like Hawkinson, but maybe even more so. I think a healthy Vitae makes a top 5 offensive line. No. A healthy Vitae and the addition of Graham Glasgow makes a top 5 offensive line even better. One of the best offensive lines in the league. It's just reality. We talked about the receivers earlier. I think the receiver situation is going to be fine because they're going to spread the ball around. They're going to do a lot of things with the tight end, with Gibbs. I think Marvin's going to be – I think people are sleeping on Marvin Jones, by the way. So the basic statement is I do believe all 3 of the other teams in the division are not as good as they were last year. But I think we're better than last year. So simply, why will they win the North? Because we're better. Why will they win 12, possibly 13 games? Because I looked at the schedule. And outside of Kansas City, I'm going to try and do this from memory. I'm not. Chargers and one more game that I honestly put all the Kool-Aid down and admitted to myself they'd be tough. I think it was 3 games. I was like, I don't know. 2 more, I thought, okay, we're going to need effort. I see 12 wins. I see possibly 13 wins. They win 13 games. They're hosting at least one playoff game. They may host multiple playoff games. And if you do that, by definition, you have a shot. You have a shot at the whole thing, right? And most of this isn't about luck or the ball bouncing their way. Guys, I think they're a really good football team. I think Brad Holmes has done his job so well. I think Dan Campbell has put together a staff that does their jobs very well. Ben Johnson's not the only good coach on that staff. I think Mark Brunell deserves more credit than he gets. I know AG deserves more credit. Shepard is getting, and the defensive line, they're deeper, they're better. They're better than every other team in the division. So all that being said, they have to go out and win the games. Go do your job. Go win the games, right? So I think my wrap up is that this is a 12 or 13 win football team. It's going to be an exciting season. There will be a game or 2, maybe 3, where I open up this mic and I'm pissed off. And I'm like, and that has nothing to do with SOL. It has to do with the league. Any guy doing a podcast about his favorite team in any city in America is going to have those games. We'll have those games. We'll have those podcasts where he will not be thrilled at what his team did. The reality is that the culture there has changed. The talent level has improved. And if you don't see it, and I'm not talking about preseason, no offensive lineman played. Goff didn't play. St. Brown didn't play. I don't think Gibbs played. So many. And that's actually the key now is we're not watching preseason games to figure out who starters are anymore. The most important thing out of Bridgewater, right, is backup quarterback. You know, what's the rotation in the secondary? Who's going to be the backup guard, right? It's the Lions. Normally, we're settling position groups in preseason. Guys are trying to, win jobs. This is about, do we keep Nate Sudfeld, right? All due respect, but he keeps throwing over the middle really high. I don't want to jump down that rabbit hole. The fact that the preseason games are not about starters. They're not about, important jobs. It's about depth. The depth on this team is significantly better. And I think I challenge you to name 3 more talented teams. I challenge you to name 3 better cultures. I find Dallas's culture to be toxic. I don't know what their running back situation is. And it's not bad mouth Dallas. That's the team I hear most as the 3rd best team. And the reality is that's not true. Philadelphia is Philadelphia. San Francisco, if they get competent quarterback play, is going to be a tough out. Nobody in the South scares me. All due respect to my friend Reggie Johnson down in Atlanta, Falcons don't scare me. Tampa's quarterback's named Baker Mayfield. Doesn't scare me. Carolina's got a rookie starting at quarterback. If anybody in the South, I like Derek Carr and the Saints, actually. But they're going to lose Kamara for a couple games. So I mean, I don't want to do that whole thing. I truly believe the Lions are the 3rd best team in the NFC. Potentially 2nd. I don't know. They still have to go do it. So all those skeptics, those people who are going, oh, they're still the Lions, but that's fine. You guys can say that. I have said for many years, this is the year. Most of the time, I said it tongue in cheek or with a mouthful of cornbread. Not this year. I think it's a good team. I like where they are. And it's going to be exciting for fans, exciting for the podcast. So yeah, that's where I am. I'm going to go ahead and go cornbready and say, they're 12-5. They host at least one playoff game, and the idea that they will play in the NFC Championship game is not far-fetched. All of that is an injury thing, but every team, if you get an injury, it could change. But on paper, and what I see, the culture, the talent, the vibe in the building, is that this is a really good football team, and you should probably get on the Jared Goff bandwagon sooner rather than later, because I think he's going to be around for a while. But that's my take on it. So I appreciate you listening. I appreciate any support, thumbs, hearts, retweets, whatever it is you do. You can watch this on YouTube. You can click it on the Twitter or X, wherever you are with that. It's just one guy's opinion of this football team. I don't try and trick anybody into thinking I'm objective. I am not. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. I have been since I was 7 years old, and it'll never change. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. I appreciate you listening, watching, however you decide to consume it. We will be back with one more before the opener. After next week's game, I'm going to come back. Fair warning. I'm going to talk leadership as a concept, but specifically with this football team. I'm going to talk a lot of Sheila. I'm going to talk a lot of Brad Holmes, and I'm going to talk a lot of Jared Goff. And because those are the 3 people, and no disrespect to Dan Campbell, those are the 3 people. I'll do a whole connection on why I think it is a real combination of those 3 people that have turned this thing around. Because I don't think the Lions are just going to be good this year. I think the Lions are set up to be good for the foreseeable. And all of you people crying that we're going to lose Ben Johnson, yeah, okay, we'll talk about that. It's a culture, it's a philosophy, it's a leadership style. And the people who hate the Ford family, people who don't like give owners credit, you don't want to listen next week. You don't want to listen next week, because I'm a Sheila guy, and I'm going to talk from data and reason and logic, and you might not like that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're going to do one more before the opener. It'll be heavy Sheila, Brad, and Jared Goff. And I'll take some Twitter comments. So jump on the Twitter and throw your arrows. I'll be ready. And then we'll be ready for the opener in I don't know, 10 or 12 days, Thursday against Kansas City. Should be fun. Again, thank you to the super producer extraordinaire, Mr. Mike Ward, always my guy. Glad to be back, kicking off our 5th season doing this. We still love it. We hope you grow to like it if you're new. And if you've hung around with us, we appreciate you. Until next time, we will see you. Everybody take care. Stay safe.